Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's new pod of Humans Plus Agents. My name is Jackie Schwab, and I am the head of operations at the AI ROI Association. And this is Steve Cunningham. He is my co-host and the founder of the AI ROI Association. Hey, Steve, how's it going?
Good, Jackie. How are you? Got your coffee?
Got
Got
my
my coffee.
coffee,
Got my coffee.
my second cup of coffee for the day. Doing very well, thank you. I'm excited for today's topic, um, or today's topics. We've had a really fun, very busy week here at the company, getting just like so much work done. So I think it's going to be fun, sort of talking through that with people and letting them know what we figured out.
We definitely learned a lot this week, and as when we were talking about this, there's like order and chaos, and it's like it's always chaos, and we always have to figure out how to turn it into order. And we're kind of like in the middle of some chaos right now, but it's exciting, and I think we're learning how to move fast, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think that's great. Um, so I think the one of the things that came out of this week, which would even be reference when we started the podcast today, which is the name of the podcast, right? Humans and agents, just like that topic around it. And I think it might be useful to sort of tell people what your thoughts are around that. And then I think we have some show and tell, some stuff we could talk about as well.
Yeah, so we've been in the weeds on this for like 2.5 years, and when we were starting out, it was all about the AI economy and like everything's going to be agents. And um, what's becoming clear is that we had a pre-AI world, which is just humans doing work. Humans, for the most part, we're focusing on knowledge work, and there's been a lot of hype around AI and agents and all that kind of stuff. And that's usually what people are leading with when they're talking about AI. It's like where everything is AI. And we did that too. Like that was how we approach it because it's exciting and it's new and all those good things. But what has happened and what is very clear is that there are never going to be just agents running a company, and there's always going to be humans involved. And so we're kind of going, and maybe we get to a point where like agents are running entire companies, but we're nowhere near that. And so there's a transition period where humans and agents need to figure out how to work together. And one of the things that is becoming clear as we are actually doing the work is that the way that work gets done is going to need to change. There's like technical things that need to change. There are mindset things that need to change. And it's going to be different than what most people think it's going to be. You're not going to spin up like N8N and build some automations and like that, just tack that on to how you used to do business. It's going to be different. So, what I want us to continue to do in both the work that we're doing and on this podcast is just to show everybody what we're doing, what we're wrestling with, where we're struggling, because there's a lot of struggles. And as you and I have figured out working together, there's tension, there's resistance to change, there's on the other side of it changing too fast. So there's a lot of messy things that need to be figured out. And that's what a human plus agent company is going to look like. So that's, I think, for me, it feels right. Like for the next few years, companies are going to figure out how to become a human plus agent company. And individuals need to figure out how to become a human plus agent team. And consultants need to figure out how to become a human plus agent consultant, and all the way through the knowledge worker economy. So that's kind of the overarching idea. And that's what we're building towards.
Yeah. I think what's interesting to me about that is, and it kind of came to me as you were sharing, is I know we and the industry and everyone spent a fair amount of time talking about the human in the loop. And I almost feel like that came from, even that came from like a fear-based place. Like, oh, don't forget, like we have AI, but don't forget the humans, don't forget the humans, don't forget the humans. And I think kind of this just like definitive switch to it is both. Like there it will be very unlikely that one would survive without both, right? You have to have both the humans and you have to have the agents. But I thought what's interesting about that as we were working through some things and this idea of context, which maybe we'll talk about a little bit later, we actually have to teach the agents how to be human or how to represent the company as much as we have to teach people, right? The people how you want them to work in your company. And I don't know if we shared this last time or went because we talk about stuff all the time, but I remember as a executive coach, I had a client and the client was a really large fintech company. And they sent me like piles of PowerPoint decks and we're like, here's our company values, and here's our ethos, and here's our objectives, and here you need to know all these things and everything that you talk to that client or our clients about. Make sure you filter them through that. First of all, that was really hard to do as a human, but the thing that came up for me and I think for you, which was like those that same input has to apply to any agent you create. So if I create like a SOP agent and our company, the company that I was talking about, they really were into radical candor. It was like a part of their ethos, and they want to make sure that everyone like in conflict as creativity. And but if you didn't tell the agent that, the agent might build the nicety version, right? The long-winded version. And so I think this idea of like humans plus agents is just as important that we have to give the context of what the company's soul is, I don't have a better word for it, to both the agents as much as the people. Because the agents are going to have zero ability to do it. Like at least humans, we can kind of do it and get it wrong, but the agents are just going to work off a generic set of information, right? If you don't. So, and then we've really worked through a lot. I think you talked this week, you did a lot around context when you were creating some assets. So I wonder if that would be helpful to sort of share with everyone.
Yeah. So the idea is that like when the AI has enough context to do the work, it does an incredibly good job. And so, um, however, almost nobody gives the AI enough context. They're asking for things and like they use one sentence prompts and gives the AI no context to do things and then gets a bad output, not surprisingly. So the idea is there's context engineering. What most people in the AI space mean about context engineering, and this is important too. So I don't want to say it's not important, but what they're talking about is like technically, how does the AI remember what it's working on in the moment? And there's a context window for the AI, and you got to make sure that the work stays within that context window. It's got to like the easiest way to think about it is the AI has a short-term memory problem. And so the and that's important. But the more important thing is for what we're talking about, which is how do you build a human plus agent company, is what is the entire knowledge base of the business? What's the strategy of the business? What are the core values of the business? How do we handle customer support tickets? How do we design websites? So all the whatever your business is, like the AI, if it has the context for all of those things, it can do an incredibly good job. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about context is, and that's what I've been learning. Like if you create a design system for a website, that's something that most smaller companies would never do because it's a thirty to $50,000 project with a design studio to come in and like do this and enormously comprehensive. Here's how your website looks and here's where the how the images get loaded and the padding and the language. So which and a lot of big companies do that work, but and it's very valuable, especially when you're using agents. So this week I created um a design system just based on what I liked about the designs that we were creating. So it was like, okay, I like this, turn this into a design system. And then 10 minutes later, the agent went away, worked on it, and I have a design system now. And that becomes context now for everything else that we do, so that everything that comes out looks and feels and sounds exactly the way we want it, which removes a lot of mental overhead for the humans because the agent just gets it right the first time. Like that's what we're trying to aim for is how does the agent get it right with the minimal amount of rework possible. And so there's a system that you need to create, and eventually we should probably have a visual that we show everybody at the beginning of every one of the podcasts. We don't have that yet. But the idea would be you need a context library, you need an SOP library, you need a source of truth for all the data that's inside of the company. Um, and you also want the ability for everybody to interact with and improve that system over time so that the humans can work well and the agents can work well. And so context is really the missing thing for a lot of organizations. And getting a system in place, not just like training, but also like an actual system that your people can work with is going to be critical to get the results that you see, especially in software engineering. The software engineering is like they're living in the future and they have all of those documents. They have the code base of the organization. They have everything that the agents need in order to do that job well. So we're just taking that concept and bringing it into the rest of the knowledge worker world, and context is king.
Yeah, I think what struck me as interesting. So you use the word design system, but if I'm an old coder, I always say, um, when I ran my software company, uh, one of what we created, which, and I know we are on a marketing agency, we created like a branding guide, right? So our branding guide had our colors, our fonts, what logos we were allowed to use, what all the icons look like, what our tone of voice is, all of that kind of stuff. And honestly, if I were to be truthful, the tech team did a pretty good job of making sure that we met brand guidelines, right? Like they're like, oh yeah, we always use this icon, we always use this font. But interestingly, everyone else in the organization struggled a bit, right? Like the marketing people, which you would think would definitely do that, were want to be more creative, or they just didn't want to go grab that document because it was a big doc, or it took a lot to look through. And I thought what was interesting when I saw the design system that you were working on when you were doing some training on it this week, it's essentially a codified brand guide with some extra stuff in it. And and I thought, oh, how cool is that? Now we make sure that, and then another SOP that came out of that was brand voice, like in our company, like how we want to talk or and communicate, like don't use emojis, like that kind of stuff. And I thought, how interesting. Now what we have is not just the software developers that are following the company's brand guides or design systems, but also every agent that's used in every part of the company, any agent that's used in support, any agent that's used in marketing, any agent that's used in operations, and even creating SOPs, all of them adhere to the brand guidelines. Now the challenge is actually the people, only the people, right? And making sure like if they're doing something outside of using the tooling, that it adheres to it. So I think it's like we always knew this, right? We always knew branding is good for credibility and authority building, and it looks nice when everything is cohesive, but there's just too much to do. Like, and so I think when you talk about human plus agents, and where people are like, oh, my job might go away or any of this stuff, I never ever in my whole life have ever been able to get done all of the things that I wanted to do in the role that I had, meeting this quality standard that I had for myself or that the company had for me. And having these like systems that keep coming up, um, it allows us to do that. And one example, and I wish I'd have kept it, and we should have thought about it, but I created as one of the tools that we have in our our company now is a product called Folio, and I had built like a just standalone homepage for it. And it was ugly. I mean, I don't do pretty well. It was kind of ugly. And all that you did different was apply the brand guide or the design system, and it turned out super slick. It looked really, really nice. And that didn't take a lot of time, right? For me to go through and try to like figure all that out, would have been impossible. So I think there's a lot to be said for we're not getting rid of things. We're actually allowing us to finally, for once, have the quality level that we want. And we're not storing that only with the technicians. Like it's not just the software guys and gals that can do it. But, and I'm curious of your thoughts on this, where I've seen more push and pull for us, because I think we're probably a little bit ahead on the tech stuff, is the bottleneck is the people and the behavior around the people. For me, I've always been really fast. Like I'm an executor. I build, I get stuff done. I go, go, go. Um, I feel like it's like the pace is really fast, and that's presented some conflict for me, and even some solutions. But I'm curious of like your perspective on that. Like the design systems are great, but how does that potentially impact the people and behavior?
Yeah, I want to just show the design system, and then I got one comment, and then I'll answer your question because I think they're related. So the let me pull up. So this is the design system, and it's incredibly comprehensive. And like I said, like it basically has all of the information that we want in order to do the designs in the way that we like them. And so, I've got actually got agents working on like revisions to other websites that we have that was pre-designed system, like literally coding right now. And this is in HTML, and this format works incredibly well for both humans and for agents. That's one of the things that we'll continue to come back to. Is like we need to build things for humans and agents. And so every time now that we do something, the agent goes and reads this. And I think the interesting thing is, it's like the agents. If you think about, you need to train the agents, like you're training an employee. It's like they learn like in an instant. They can learn anything you want in an instant, but they'll forget it in like 10 minutes. So it's a different, right? So you got to like actually you can be incredibly comprehensive, and it'll learn something in 10 seconds that would have taken a human being 20 years of their life. Like they'll literally will learn how to do this design system everywhere, and it'll look great. Like that would have taken a designer forever. So it's a weird thing. But at the same time, again, they forget. So once you get in the mindset of, okay, like if we do these things consistently, I can, as long as I have enough comprehensive documentation for the agent to refer to when we say go. Because remember, it starts every task with I know nothing, almost like that. I just don't know anything. So I got to train you in 10 seconds how to do this job. And you can do that if you have all the training that you need for that agent. So I think that's like that's the first time I've thought of it that way. It's like every time you press a button, step one is train the agent. And how does it get trained? And it's like this time lapse. So like it happens in 10 seconds, but it's going through like 20 years of learning kind of thing. And human, it's like, I don't know, it's like dog years and human years or something like that. And so what it does is once somebody figures out something, how to do it that quick, you start executing that quick. And if you haven't aligned that with all the rest of the humans, they're like, this is going too fast. I don't get it. And so it's almost like there's like a realignment that needs to continuously happen with the humans, because now I know that I can do these web pages, and I've already thought of all the million other things that we could do with this, but you don't have that context. Yeah, because we haven't talked about it. And that's part of the tension that we need to figure out how to resolve, because it creates conflict. But to your point, and maybe even back to the idea of, what was it, radical candor? Because you said creativity or conflict creates creativity. I thought that was a nice way of putting it. Um, it creates conflict. And if we treat conflict as good, or just something to solve. It's not good or bad. It's like that is actually like, okay, if we're arguing about something and we're both frustrated, that means we're about to do something good. Like we're about to figure out, okay, how do we solve this problem so the next time it happens, where it doesn't come up in this way. And because we can codify it in a system that trains agents and then also brings it into life for humans, like trying to figure out a way to articulate this without it going too far off the rails. Like we're recording this right now, and out of this session, we should probably have learning artifacts that we could teach our team on, but also agents should have access to it to learn like how are the humans in this company thinking about what we're trying to do together. So it's like every single time we have a conversation, you take the transcript, load it up, and it spawns more stuff for the agents and the humans to learn. So it's like this never ending learning loop, and that's just going to cause a lot of conflicts or a lot of tension as we try to figure out how to change the way that we're working. So I view it as a good thing, which then all goes back to like all of the soft skill stuff that like leadership has been talking about for a long time. It's like psychological safety is about to get like super important because it is weird. It's like when you don't understand something, um, and you're not on the same page with other people, it's a scary thing because you're like, I'm just like lost at sea on this thing. So and but unfortunately and fortunately, the more times you feel like that, the more progress you'll actually make. So it's almost like you got to help people get comfortable being uncomfortable. And then that's when the progress happens. So that's a bunch of rambling. But what I'm also confident is that as you and I think through these things, we then will spit it out to the AI and we'll say, hey, what, tell us what we were talking about here and how can we help other people see what we're seeing. Um, so yeah, it'll create this infinite learning loop that never ends, and the organization and the people who learn the fastest will win.
Yeah. I think there's a whole bunch of great points that you made there. Um, One that I thought was really, really interesting, and I'm probably want to go talk to myself later about it, which is the idea of learning is different between the human learning and the AI learning. The idea of retention is different, but also that means the energy is different, both literally and figuratively. So for example, um, once I am trained on something as a human, it kind of goes into procedural memory, right? So it's like when you drive a car, you don't have to go, here's how I turn the key, here's where I put my foot on the gas, here's where I put my foot on the brake, right? You don't have to do that anymore, right? It becomes part of your, procedural memory, unconscious memory allows you to do things without burning as much intellectual cycles, right? And often the way that people become really productive is that is the type of work they proceduralize, right? They make it so they can do it quick. They do it well. They do it fast. It's very tactical driven, right? Interestingly, that is also the work now that the AI can learn really fast. And if you put it in an agent, all that procedural savings, right, is just they just do it, they just do it, they just do it. But that leaves only a certain kind of work left, right, for people. Now we go from being able to get through a day because some of the work we're doing is low cognitive energy, but that's the work you want to hand off, right? The repetitive, easy to do stuff that you don't have to think about. And what happens is the all of the work that you do becomes high cognitive load, right? High energy, high cost work for people, right? And or at least that's what I think. And some to some degree, a little bit of what I think I'm experiencing, and others might be as we're trying to transition and learn how this goes. But also, um, I know how to show my boss that I get tactical things done, right? The AI now is going to do a lot of that tactical work. So now I have to go to my boss and say, I was thinking for 3 hours, right? And that doesn't like that's really for me it was a big conflict because I felt always felt like to say oh I was brainstorming or I was thinking um that wasn't work, right? You couldn't quantify it, you couldn't ROI it, you couldn't explain that. And so for me, a lot of things that keep coming up are like there's definitely a different energy outlay, like cognitive energy. I'm tired at the end of these new days because I'm not used to thinking that deep all of the time. And we're having to figure out how to quantify or justify or share what kind of work we're doing. And then that all leads to exactly what you're saying before is psychological safety is imperative now because luckily we have a relationship where I'm like, hey Steve, like I'm feeling a lot of conflict around saying I thought for 3 hours, right? Like because we track everything we do because we're using it to learn. I had a lot of pushback around tracking things, even when that was like a long time ago that we were doing it. Um, but that wasn't about you and me or even the current state of where work was done and how companies did work. There was always like this punitive piece at other places I've been or other people have been around not being able to prove work, right? Not being able to show that you're getting work done. And if we didn't have the psychological safety stuff, I built the coolest thing, right? I said I was like quote unquote thinking for 3 hours, and I built this fully functional app that we took weeks to build last year. And I built it in like the building of it took maybe 10 minutes, right? Like the thinking to get all there and to figure that all out was that larger amount of time. So there is a lot of creativity in the conflict, but if you don't have psychological safety, the conflict can actually shut the people down. Mhm. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on in the different way work has to be thought about, tracked, and done with this combo, this hybrid environment of both people and agents, and the fact that we think and execute and do everything differently.
So a few things on what you just said. So there was um the idea that you were, because I think this actually might change how we do the journal. So don't get all freaked out. But I think like the so yesterday you felt, and it's interesting because I would not have any like, if you spent 2 hours thinking, if you thought it was valuable to spend 2 hours thinking, I'd say great, like tell me what you learned. Like I would not have any, but you had in your mind like I would have some like negative reaction to like you spent 2 hours thinking. However, but as you just pointed out, you created a deliverable, and the deliverable, the output of your 2 hours of thinking was a deliverable. And so because right now we're tracking like tasks, it's like what are you doing, and that gets like really into minute detail. But if the fundamental unit of value is a deliverable, I just, all I care about is yesterday, what deliverables did you make? And that app was previously and like, is it valuable? And also, um, did you do it faster because you're using AI? And the answer to that is like, obviously that's true. So, which I think will reduce the cognitive load on the journal. It's just like, okay, here's the art, and but it'll also force the thinking into like everything as a deliverable. Like if you didn't make anything that day as a knowledge worker, you added no value to the company. If tomorrow morning, this is the way I'm thinking about it now. Like if tomorrow morning our agents and our humans are not better, there was a failure. And anytime a deliverable is created and added to the system, at the very least, there is information that the agent can learn from. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
even if we don't put those things into production, that is um that is more stuff for the entire company to reason over, which can then get turned into learning artifacts, which can then get turned into SOPs. So what we learned yesterday was you can build a really slick the way I like to call it, a space pencil app. So it's like in the old world, you would never do it this way because it's not the way you build an app. But you made an HTML page, and on the back end, there's a CSV file, which is the data, like the really straightforward flat database for this app, because that's all it needs. It doesn't need a relational database. And boom, it's an app. And we would have spent so much time building that thing in the past, and we did. I spent you built in like 2 hours, and 2 hours was sharpening the saw and like 10 minutes of work by the agent. Something that I probably spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on, literally, because we have like Chang would have been working on that for like he did work on it for several years. So probably millions of dollars I would have spent in the past world to build that, and you did it with 2 hours of thinking and 10 minutes of what is essentially an agent um, working on it. So it is. I wanted to put that there because I think it is like the fundamental unit of value in a human plus agent company is a deliverable, and everything orbits around that. And there are deliverables that should and can be created that most people would never think to make. Like this podcast needs to be a deliverable inside of our system, as a signal. The way I was thinking about this today, like what is the context lake? Because we talked about context lake. That's like a technical term, and it's like what the heck is a context like? But these are like little signals to the team and to the agents that here's how here's how we're thinking about doing our work, which we would never remember this conversation, or at least I wouldn't. Maybe you would. I would never remember this conversation. Like, what did we talk about? No idea. But now, if this gets turned into an artifact, I will never forget what we talked about in this conversation, and so we can compound our efforts. Anyway, that was a long rant on that stuff, but I think
I think it's great,
like
actually.
that was really when you figure that out, which was HTML files are really easy to build. Anybody now can build HTML files. And if you just load a CSV file in the back end as well, anybody can build basically these micro apps. And because it's easy to do with AI, we just need to show people how to use like step one, copy and paste this HTML file into your LLM. Like, and that's oddly enough where the most friction is like, I don't know how to load this file into the LLM. So,
We had that yesterday. It was funny.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
anyways, that's my rant on that.
I love that. So I want to show something to you in the group. I didn't realize this, but I've already organically started doing that, right? So I worked on this. This was my deliverable, and I was thinking where of because on the product side, I was like, well, how do what I want to put in there is this. I want this link to be an easy clickable thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so it'd have been great to have like a little explanation like I was doing. But if you notice, I actually started putting in, I had a meeting, so here's my notes. I had this new thing I did, so here's the workflow I used. I had this, here's the different pages that I had built. So I already was organically putting in what all those different artifacts were, including calls, right? So we have calls, and what were the calls that we're having? We all have training calls that we do. So I think that like it that's how we are working here, right? We do it and use it, and when we're doing it and use it, then we find, oh wait, that's why what we need to do to change that. So after this call, I will take this transcript and upload it and then add to my master list of things to do. I think that it would be really important for us to have a place to store or link or expose the artifact, like you were saying, because every artifact can be in HTML. And then in general, like this, like I thought it was just a cool little, this is the quick app that we built in that, like literally this was a huge thing that we were doing before. And all of this information is just HTML and Excel file. But this artifact link is just a link. It could have also just gone into that list. It was so the idea where I got worried, right? There, I was like, I'm not working because I can't prove I was working for 2 hours. But this, if you were like, what did you do? And I sent you this link, you'd be like, oh yeah, like this is what you're getting done. So I think there's a ton of value in making that update. And also, like, what did you do is not the right answer. Is like, show me what is done. And then one thing you didn't touch on, but I think is super important, you glossed over it quick, so I want to make sure that we share, is the reason it's HTML. Because I was joking with my husband, like, I've been around long enough that where the internet started, and the internet started with HTML pages, right? Just simple single pages. And then we started making Word and Excel and PowerPoint and all these other giant, software applications. But that was because the only people consuming it were people, right? Now we're talking about more consumption needing to be done, and the format needing to be something that both the agents and the people can read natively and get good stuff out of. So I think that you kind of talked about that this week with others, but it might be useful to share that, like, thought with the audience too.
Yeah. So, and then remind me to come back to the journal because there's something that I think clicked for me there. But we'll do this one first. So I have the benefit of never having written a line of code in my life. So I couldn't care less how I get something done with technology. I just want it done. So like I have a certain mindset that is ignorant of like intentionally ignorant of the details. So I can think freely about like how can this work? And what it's just because I have no experience in writing code. I still have to this day, I've not written a single line of code in my life. And I don't think I ever will because most software engineers are saying now like they will never write another line of code in their life. So HTML is, so like you said, in the human only world. So we think again in three phases: human only, human plus agent, and then like eventually just agent world. We're making a transition from human to human plus agent. In the human world, visually doing visual presentations of material needed a like a container for it to go in. It's because a word, when you type into a Word document and you send it, it's like a package of code. It's like, but all of the complexity of that code is hidden from you, and it's actually pretty complex. HTML is really easy for a developer to build, but developers used to be very expensive, and so you would never code a page for a memo. Like that would be ridiculous. You would never code a PowerPoint presentation because that would be ridiculous because it would cost you thousands of dollars to do. So, but if you think about the fact, and this is mostly true, that the cost of code is now trending towards zero. It's not zero and never will be zero, but it's small enough now that you can build as many web pages as you want, and it'll cost you for the most part a $20 a month subscription to whatever your favorite LLM is. If you're churning through these all day every day, you maybe have to have an upgraded membership from that. So it's like very inexpensive now to produce a web page, like pennies, maybe a penny, maybe less than a penny. And once you have that idea, um, the the language or the we need a language to communicate ideas to humans and agents. If you think about how most software engineers who are using AI to the greatest extent, they think in terms of things that they're comfortable with, which is markdown files and just code and just straight text, like because that's how they've viewed the world. But that's not good for most knowledge work. Like we need visuals, we need to see things, we need to know how like something flows through a system. And so what HTML is like the perfect solution for a human plus agent world where the humans need to see things visually, um, and the agents need to be able to read things quickly and perfectly because agents cannot read power like or they currently cannot and probably never will read PowerPoint, Word, and all those types of different files well because there's just so much code wrapped around the information you want to convey. The last benefit of HTML is that it's infinitely linkable. So, as an agent is going through something or a human is going through something, you can click to the next piece of information, to the next piece of information. So, it actually becomes a comprehensive navigation system through the company operating system as well. So that's the reason for HTML. I suspect it's one of those things where the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed yet, and maybe it takes a very long time for everyone to have that realization. But it just seems to me like a foregone conclusion because it is organizations who can just make that leap will build systems that operate faster and better and cheaper than companies that don't. And so everything gets driven by market forces, blah, blah, blah. That's why HTML is going to be a thing. The last thing I want to point out before we move on, and sounds, I think we're going to have to wrap it up soon because I think we both have to go. But um, the idea of the journal. So back to the journal. If you just put a link in, and right now it's just static text, right? So, but if it was actually a link, um, so you take your call transcript, you turn it into a link in the system, and now it's a link. And now I can just I both the agents and the humans can go see what happened today by just clicking, and that would be super cool, and it would be also extremely helpful. And so, like Christina, who's doing our customer support, just do a once a day deliverable. Here's what happened in customer support today. Now it's a link, it's a page. I go in and look at it. Well, I didn't know, or I have my agent go and go through all the links that were created today. Like, what happened today? In the morning, we have a new list of things like based on what happened yesterday, here's what we should focus on today, kind of thing. So I think I think the thing that you and I in our company needs to do is to make all of that complexity just go away. It's just easy to use, but beneath it all is a comprehensive system that just works. And HTML, like an operating website, is the right abstraction for it because everybody is very comfortable with navigating websites. That's one thing I know for sure. And I feel like this is that we're doing like idea tennis here. It's like you say something and I say something and it just so
Yeah.
back to you.
Back to you. No, actually, I love that thought because that's what again, I think two last thoughts, I guess, maybe can help us wrap up. One is the reason we have the idea of this journal thing, right? Clicking on the link is because I'm using it. We're using and building tools and learning every single day. And so that thought when we were doing product development or product ideation, that wouldn't have been a thought that we just had. It had to evolve out of the doing. And that's, for another podcast, I'm sure, but even the ideation as part of the software development lifecycle has changed. The way mockups are done has changed. The way QA is being done has changed. It's not just, software and it's not just deliverables. So I think there's a lot of value in that topic and that idea. And yeah, idea tennis is good. And I think that again, the last one, which is gonna be really challenging because so like I said, I am an old software developer. We don't tend to like change. We like things to be routine. I like to operationalize everything. I want everything to be sequential. However, right, I don't come up with novel, great ideas if I'm always doing what I always did, right? And you tend to have great ideas. And the challenge being getting from an idea to implementing it, right? So like that creativity through conflict, I think is especially true in the new agent human or humans plus agent world. You're going to need someone that thinks outside the box, but you're also going to need someone that puts it in the box to deliver it. And there has to be enough overlap there and psychological safety and trust where that conflict can create the new things. Um, and I guess that would be kind of an everyday learning for me. I literally every day I'm like, all right, but that thing that happened this morning is now this new micro app. That thing that happened this morning is now this new SOP. That thing that happened this morning is now a new software or a new support, ticket answer. And that's actually rewarding, right? It wasn't like you have this like spent energy because you had an argument or it's, oh, okay, that energy went into creation, right? Something new.
Yeah, I think we could probably do the tennis forever, but I do want to say one last thing just to capture it because I think this is a interesting way to think about outside the box and the box itself. It's like we're gonna have lots of ideas that are I will have lots of ideas that are outside the box. Some of them we can do and some of them we can't. And I will always be frustrated because we can't do all of my ideas. But some of them we can do, right? And so you're like in the way, and we're not 100% one way and 0% the other way, but in our relationship, I come up with all the crazy crap and we figure out like what can we actually do. It's like you need someone who can think outside the box, but then you need someone who can expand the box. Like the box, like if we can do this thing, there's like we redraw the box. So tomorrow, the organization can now do that. And so you do need both because that is what we're trying to do is to expand the size of the box that we're playing in. And we want the biggest sandbox in the neighborhood or the world kind of thing. And if we have the biggest one, we will win. So I think that is an interesting place for us to stop for today. And I think um yeah. So now we see what we can do with turning this into artifacts that are useful and but I've got some ideas. We'll see what we can do with it.
All right. Well, sounds good. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today for our Humans Plus Agents podcast, and we look forward to seeing you every week. If you would like to learn more about the company and products that we have, go to roiassociation.ai. All right, Steve, thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you again next week.
Thanks, Jackie. See ya.
Bye.